So let's get more now on Lord Heseltine, who says he's been sacked as a government advisor after he rebelled over the government's Brexit bill. In a statement tonight, he said it's the duty of Parliament to assert its sovereignty in determining the legacy we leave to new generations of young people. Well, this comes hours before what's been called the Chancellor's Brexit budget. Our chief political correspondent, John Craig, is outside number 11 for us tonight. And John, first, what has Lord Heseltine been saying then this evening?
Well, Lord Heseltine was one of 13 Tory rebels in a vote in the House of Lords this evening on the calls for an extra vote in Parliament on the Brexit deal. Voting was pretty decisive. It was 366 to 268, a majority against the government of 98. Now, there have been calls, after Michael Heseltine said about 10 days ago that he was going to lead a mutiny. He talked about the fight back starting here. Tory backbenchers and indeed Lord Tebbit, his old foe from the Thatcher cabinet, said he should be sacked from various advisory posts that he holds. And so this evening he has said, "I've just been told by the Chief Whip in the Lords that number 10 is to sack me from the 5 jobs with which I've been helping the government following my vote in the House of Lords earlier today. This is entirely the right of the Prime Minister, and I'm sorry that the expertise which I've put at the government's disposal over the last 6 years has now come to an end. However, at the last resort, I believe, as I said in the Lords, the future of this country is inextricably interwoven with our European friends."
John, thank you. Well, let's get more on this because Lord Heseltine joins me now on the phone. Lord Heseltine, thanks very much indeed for talking to us here on Sky News. Tell us a little bit about what's happened then tonight. I understand that you say that you've been sacked.
Yes, I'm told I'm going to be sacked. The Chief Whip in the Lords told me this a couple of hours ago. Said the Prime Minister was going to sack me. I've not heard anything from the Prime Minister, but obviously if the Chief Whip in the Lord tells me I'm going to be sacked, I'm going to be sacked.
And this is being sacked from your roles as an advisor to the government, is that right?
Yes, I've been working for the government now for 6 years. It's been a huge privilege, and I've been working in fields I knew a great deal about as a result of my ministerial responsibilities. And, of course, I'm very sad and sorry to see it go. But in the end, you know, you have to be true to yourself. And I knew I had to make that speech today in the House of Lords. If the Prime Minister can't live with that, well, I have to respect her right to sack me.
And why did you feel so strongly about this particular amendment? It was about giving a meaningful parliamentary vote, as it was put in the amendment, on this Brexit bill. And yet the government would say it's already given guarantees that there will be parliamentary scrutiny. So why did you feel so strongly about this?
Well, if the government has given assurances, why can't it be in legislation? Why should they care? I mean, what's the fuss? The truth is that none of us know what's going to happen over the next couple of years. I wish the Prime Minister well. I'm sure she will do everything she believes to be right. But none of us can see what governments we're going to be dealing with in Europe. We can't see what the circumstances are going to be. We can't see what the deal is going to be. All the people like me in the House of Lords are saying is that the ultimate sovereignty of this country lies in Parliament. I mean, that's what the Brexit people have been saying all along. We've got to have sovereignty back. Well, if you have sovereignty back, surely Parliament is the custodian of sovereignty.
And yet the government would say that the amendment damages the national interest, is their words. They say that it would make Theresa May's Brexit negotiations more difficult. It increases the incentive for EU countries to offer a worse deal in the hope that Parliament would scupper Brexit.
No, yes, but you see, that's not what's going to happen. The Europeans are not going to offer us a good deal. They're not going to do that for the simplest of all possible reasons. That if they offer us a good deal, they may lose other members of the European Union. So they've spelt it out in black and white. You know, the trouble for people like me is that we've been around this course since the end of the Second World War. We were offered the leadership of Europe, and we turned it down. And then we when they went ahead, we tried to compete with them by creating the European Free Trade Area because we didn't believe in the centralism, and so we said, let's just do free trade. That disintegrated because all the members, most of the members of it, joined the European Union. And so they're not going to let us, so to speak, break the rules of the club, which they treasure. Now, we may not like the fact they treasure the rules of the club, but the reason they've got this club is because decade after decade, century after century, they saw the consequences of war on the continent of Europe. They said it has to stop. We have to talk and not fight. And frankly, as someone who lived through the Second World War, I rather sympathize with that. And now it's a world power, the European Union. And so, from Britain's point of view, why do we prejudice our interests on the continent? I mean,
Okay.
What are we trying to gain?
And now that you and your fellow Lords have voted for this amendment, it of course goes back to the House of Commons, will you be urging Tory MPs in the House of Commons to back you and vote for this amendment?
Well, what I think we've done in the House of Lords is to say to the House of Commons, and this is the job of the House of Lords, look, we feel there should be a proper process in law of parliamentary scrutiny. If you don't agree in the House of Commons, then you won't accept our advice. And what was quite apparent to me, and certainly it's my position, if the House of Commons reject our amendment, we wouldn't make a constitutional crisis out of it. We would accept the view of the Commons. We're not trying to overrule the Commons or become an equal partner to the Commons. We're merely doing what the House of Lords traditionally is expected to do, which is to ask the House of Commons to think again. If the House of Commons thinks again, rejects our amendment, then I personally wouldn't vote to reinstate the.
Well, Lord Heseltine, we appreciate your time this evening. Thanks very much indeed for joining us here on Sky News. Lord Heseltine there saying that he's been told by the Chief Whip that he has been sacked from his advisory roles to the government. That story has broken late tonight, so it won't have made it in tomorrow's newspapers. So let's get more now on Lord Heseltine, who says he's been sacked as a government advisor after he rebelled over the government's Brexit bill. In a statement tonight, he said it's the duty of Parliament to assert its sovereignty in determining the legacy we leave to new generations of young people. Well, this comes hours before what's been called the Chancellor's Brexit budget. Our chief political correspondent, John Craig, is outside number 11 for us tonight. And John, first, what has Lord Heseltine been saying then this evening?
Well, Lord Heseltine was one of 13 Tory rebels in a vote in the House of Lords this evening on the calls for an extra vote in Parliament on the Brexit deal. Voting was pretty decisive. It was 366 to 268, a majority against the government of 98.